Hello, future doctors. Welcome back to Best Medicine's GCSE AQA Biology lecture series. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about biodiversity. Bio means organisms, and diversity comes from differences, variability. So, differences or variability in species in organisms. Therefore, biodiversity is the variety of different species living in an ecosystem. Now, the more diverse an ecosystem is, the more stable it is. That's why biodiversity is important. Think of it in terms of interdependence. It's kind of like if you have very less species, right, and a keystone species removed, it's going to have a very severe knock-on effect. Remember knock-on effect, right? So if you remove a species, it can significantly affect the groups of organisms that are interdependent on one another. For example, if you remove a very most common plant, let's say, right, from an ecosystem, if the most common plant is gone, then most of the organisms most of the primary consumers that live in that particular ecosystem are feeding on that plant, and they would also be removed, affecting not just primary consumers but secondary as well as tertiary consumers and so on. Now, if you have a greater biodiversity, you would have many different kinds of plants producing many different kinds of foods. And so even if you remove one plant, you would still have all the other plants available to have the primary consumers and the secondary consumers, the primary consumers to feed on that plant and still save essentially the organisms that live in that ecosystem. So lesser knock-on effect if there is greater biodiversity. Biodiversity also is important because it increases sources available for different materials, for example, for medicine, for scientific research. It also helps strengthen food security. What is food security? Food security is essentially the availability of food, and we're going to be talking about this in its own section. Now, here's the thing. Human population is increasing. It has increased significantly in the last 50 years. Now, the reason why it's increasing is because people are just living longer. They're living longer because they have better nutrition, better healthcare, right? Better living conditions. But here's the thing. If they're living longer and human population is increasing, that means that our impact on the environment is also increasing. And therefore, biodiversity is going to decrease, mostly in a bad way, unless we have conservation efforts. So our impact on the environment and therefore biodiversity is also increasing, and usually the impact is in a bad way on the environment as well as biodiversity. Now here's some of the problems that are arising with increasing population. Number one, because we're increasing population, we're just destroying these forests and just clearing land to set up farms and houses, and we call that urbanization. So urbanization, habitat destruction is a very important thing. You destroy habitats, you destroy the number of species living there, and that can result in decreased biodiversity. Number two, pollution. Of course, increasing population would mean that we're producing greater amounts of toxins, for example, burning more fossil fuels, and we have more factories making more materials and therefore more waste, which makes clean animal habitats uninhabitable. Acidic gases. When we have this combustion going on in factories as well as cars, that results in acidic gases being released. And we'll talk more about this later if you don't know what some of the acidic gas is. You're supposed to know this for chemistry as well as biology. All the oxides of nitrogen are acidic gases, and sulfur dioxide or oxides of sulfur are also acidic. And so you don't want them to essentially go out into the clouds and rain down on you. So acidic gases are produced, which cause acid rain, and that has very severe consequences that we're going to look at in a bit. So it decreases soil pH and directly damages crops. There's also climate change acceleration. Climate change acceleration because of the greenhouse effect. Essentially what we do is we release CO2. A lot of CO2 is being released, which causes global warming, which eventually results in shifts in weather patterns, floods, droughts, melting of ice caps, which eventually destroys habitats. It also affects breeding seasons of many species. Okay, so the greenhouse effect, again, I will explain it finally in its own section in this particular topic. Introduction of invasive species. Over-competition resulting in extinction of less suitable species. For example, Australia's rabbit problem. With the increase in population, we eventually explore different areas, and when we explore more areas that are more sort of untouched, we bring in different kinds of species there, and those species that we bring in could by chance be invasive species, and they can very easily proliferate there, affecting the original species living there. So what are the solutions for this? You can think of a lot of solutions for this. Make things more sustainable, but if you're evil like Thanos, then something like this. World population 7.6 billion people, and all of a sudden it's 3.8 billion people with the flick of a finger. Okay. So the next section is going to concern ourselves. We're going to concern ourselves with pollution. There's different kinds of pollution, and I think you have been learning this since maybe grade 5. That there's different kinds of pollution in the environment. There's land pollution, there's air pollution, there's water pollution, right? And so let's start with land pollution, polluting the land. How can we pollute the land? Well, number one is that we have human waste, right? Untreated human waste pollutes soil as well as water with chemicals and parasites. Which is why we have this water cleaning facilities, that we have sewage cleaning facilities that you learn in AQA GCSE Chemistry, right? In which you treat water and make it potable, as well as treat water before it goes back into rivers and lakes. So that is a topic in AQA GCSE Chemistry. Household and industrial waste. Household waste in landfills destroys habitats and spreads toxins into the soil. Industrial waste. Of course, industries produce lots and lots of toxins. And so those toxins, for example, waste, even some nuclear waste, can eventually pile up, and arsenic and other toxic metals can eventually pile up in soils and water and so on, and eventually go into the people or even plants and organisms, causing havoc here and there. A very good example of this was poisoning, metal poisoning that would occur and cause cancers in many different places. Agriculture pollution. Weeds, pests, and fungi lead farmers to use chemicals like herbicides and pesticides, and that can eventually wash up into many different places, polluting the land. Now here's the thing, these poisons enter the soil and they affect food chains. How? Because these are usually absorbed by the plants or animals and consumed. And so small amounts of these toxins eventually accumulate as, for example, an animal feeds on a plant that has this toxin absorbed in it, and the toxin goes in small amounts to the animals, especially to top predators, which are not fed upon by another thing, and it then eventually accumulates over time in the top predators, and that is called bioaccumulation. So bioaccumulation is very dangerous for top predators because you have accumulation of all of these toxins that are coming from land and accumulating in top predators as it eats contaminated food. Okay, polluting the water. We have done this before as well, eutrophication, so I'm not gonna explain this in much detail, but basically what happens is that you have essentially untreated sewage, or you have fertilizers that eventually wash up in water bodies. And when you have fertilizers washing up in water bodies, right, for example, this is a water body, and then here's soil, and here's some plants and stuff, and then they're producing oxygen. So if you have fertilizer that washes up here, that is going to cause algae to grow, and algae grows on top, blocking all the sunlight, right? So if sunlight is blocked, now sunlight cannot reach these marine plants. If sunlight cannot reach these marine plants, there's no oxygen. There's no oxygen, the fish over here are just gonna die, right? All the fish here are just gonna, they don't have oxygen to live, so they end up dying. All the marine species end up dying. So here in this image we have a dead fish because we have a lot of algae here, which is blocking the sunlight, depriving the water of oxygen. And this is called eutrophication. Okay, this is called eutrophication. So let's have a look in the neat notes. Fertilizers and nitrates. Farmers use fertilizers to maintain soil fertility. Nitrates from fertilizers also wash into waterways, stimulating algae growth. Reducing light for plants. Sewage, untreated sewage increases nitrate levels in the water, promoting again algae growth, which covers the water surface. When it covers water surface, it prevents any sunlight. This should be sunlight. from reaching underneath, and this means that marine plants cannot produce oxygen. This depletes the oxygen in water bodies and therefore causing plant, fish, and other animals deaths. Okay? You could also have chemicals such as pesticides and herbicides and landfill chemicals eventually washing up into waterways and cause accumulation and so on. Now, we can check the quality of river water by using something called bioindicators. There's many kinds of these, and you don't need to sort of remember the details, but bioindicators are those indicators that help check the quality of the water, for example, in rivers and lakes. Usually these are some small invertebrates or small fish that are used to see if they survive and how well they proliferate in the water and so on, right? And even chemicals can be used to check for water quality. So bioindicators can be used to check for river pollution. So after land pollution and water pollution, eventually we have the air pollution. Air pollution could be of many different kinds. The first one that I want to focus on is the production of those gases, acidic gases, that go up in the atmosphere and mix with water in the clouds and becomes acid rain. Okay? The formation of acid rain. So how does this work? This is quite high yield, occasionally comes up in the exams, and you need to know the gases that will eventually cause acid rain. So here's the thing. When you burn fossil fuels, right? When you burn fossil fuels, then fossil fuels contain, first of all, impurities like sulfur, right? Sulfur comes from impurities in the fuel, which eventually combines with oxygen as you're burning to form oxides of sulfur, like sulfur dioxide. And then sulfur dioxide mixes with water to form sulfuric acid. Dilute sulfuric acid, and that's going to rain down on you. Okay? So that's one. Another is oxides of nitrogen. Combustion engines and other places in which there are high temperatures and pressures, the nitrogen, which is usually unreactive, and nitrogen is present in the air. So nitrogen comes from the air, right? Sulfur comes from the impurities. And this is a question that showed up earlier, I think this year in the exam as well. Sulfur, they asked, where does sulfur come from, which eventually combines with oxygen to form sulfur dioxide and eventually forms sulfuric acid. So where does this sulfur come from? And the answer to this is impurities in the fuel. While nitrogen comes from the air, right? Nitrogen in the air, which eventually combines with oxygen to form oxides of nitrogen. This could be NO, this could be NO2. Different oxides of nitrogen eventually form acid, right? Different kinds of acids. And then those acids eventually go and rain down on us, okay? So, the sulfur in fossil fuel comes from impurities in the fuel, which when combusted results in formation of sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide combined with water makes sulfuric acid, and this is going to go ahead and rain down on us. At very high temperatures, nitrogen, usually it's unreactive because it's got that triple covalent bond in chemistry, right? If you don't know what covalent bonds are, just send us a message. We can book a lesson, try to learn these, okay? Especially if you're starting out chemistry in year 9. So, triple bond. Very difficult to break this. That is why nitrogen in the air just exists as it is, 78%, doesn't really do anything, pretty much unreactive. But if you have very high temperatures, such as in the engines, and very high pressures, then this nitrogen can go ahead and react. And when it reacts with oxygen, it forms different oxides of nitrogen. And those oxides can then combine with water and form acid and rain down on us. So these acidic gases dissolve in rainwater, forming sulfuric acid and nitric acid, etc. And then this is what we get. You get acid rain, you get acid rain, everybody gets acid rain. Not good. So what are the effects of acid rain? Why is it so bad? Obviously it's acid, right? So it's supposed to be bad. I mean, we cannot have acid raining down on us. It's not that low of a pH, but it's still very, very bad. Why? First of all, environmental damage, especially forests. So acid rain may damage leaves, buds, flowers, and roots of plants, destroying ecosystems, literally. You just wipe out all the greenery, and then you don't have producers anymore. And so you don't have producers, you're not able to produce food anymore, and you don't have primary consumers being able to feed anything. Also, water bodies will become acidic, which will kill any aquatic life. If soil becomes acidic, plants cannot grow there. So kills off all the trees and marine life and so on. Acid snow. In colder regions like Finland, acid rain falls as acid snow, and this can eventually land on these structures, like marble structures and so on, and this can directly damage buildings. You know, a popular structure that was damaged by acid rain is being damaged by acid rain is the Taj Mahal in Agra, India. Taj Mahal is made of marble, and remember what happens when acid plus marble, which is calcium carbonate, right? Acids plus carbonates gives what? Acids plus any carbonate gives salt plus carbon dioxide plus water, right? That's the general equation for a reaction of acids plus metal carbonates. That is part of the chemical changes chapter in AQA GCSE chemistry. Okay. Cross-border pollution as well. Acid rain can affect countries that did not produce the pollution. For example, if China is producing a lot of acidic gases, but they're flying out into India, then usually India produces a lot of acid gases as well. But just saying, if it's then you have problems, right? Okay, mitigation efforts. So how can we try to reduce the amounts of sulfur dioxide and oxides of nitrogen being produced? Well, one of the things that we can do is we have these catalytic converters in the cars. Remember, one of the most popular places in which acidic gases are produced are car engines. So if we can sort of reduce that somehow, we should be able to mitigate at least the effects of acid rain. So we have something called catalytic converters. These are components present in car engines, especially car exhaust, not inside engines, but in the exhausts. If you see here, that's a catalytic converter. And what they contain are very expensive metals, okay? Very expensive metals, like platinum and stuff. And these are very expensive metals, and they serve as very good catalysts. And they catalyze automatic conversion of all of those harmful gases into harmless gases. For example, let me show you. You could have something like carbon monoxide, and carbon monoxide, it catalyzes it to convert into carbon dioxide. Remember, carbon monoxide is more harmful than carbon dioxide. It can also cause conversions of, for example, unburned fuel. Unburned fuel is being converted into CO2. It can also cause the conversion of oxides of nitrogen to directly nitrogen, mitigating the effects of acid rain. So that's a catalytic converter. Because it's so expensive, usually drug addicts, they try to steal these from cars. So make sure your catalytic converter is safe. We can also try to solve this by using fuels that have low sulfur content, right? Purer fuels that have less impurity of sulfur. Low sulfur fuels. Smoke pollution. So the other kind of air pollution, apart from acid rain and acidic oxides, is smoke pollution. Of course, smoke blocks sunlight, right? And it prevents us from being able to see as well. This is because smoke contains small particles, very microparticles, that are called particulates. Okay, particulates. So burning of fuels causes release of small microparticles of pollutants called particulates. Now these particulates are harmful, very harmful. A couple of things. Number one, they can literally just go ahead and block sunlight. When they block sunlight, then we're not able to see well. And when we're not able to see well, it dims the entire atmosphere, and that is called, we also call it global dimming, right? Global dimming. This is bad because it can reduce sunlight reaching plants as well as cooling effect of Earth. Now, another very harmful relationship for particulates to humans is that these can directly be inhaled by humans. When we breathe these in, they're just going to directly go ahead and go into our trachea and go into our bronchi and bronchioles and alveoli and go ahead and damage them. So when we breathe them, inhale them, but they're going to go ahead and damage the lungs. Right? This can increase chance of lung cancer and other lung diseases. Now here's the thing. They can ask you in the exam, where does this particulate come from? Especially in chemistry, okay? Not so much in biology, but maybe in chemistry. Where do these particulates come from? Well, it comes from burning pretty much all kinds of fuels, but most importantly, you should remember this example, diesel combustion, okay? Diesel combustion, especially in like very large tankers and trucks and so on. What is the definition of smog? Smog is essentially smoke plus acidic gases combined, okay? That's the definition of smog. So fog is, you know what fog is, and smog is smoke plus acidic gases combined. So it's kind of like fog, but it's made up of smoke and acidic gases instead of fog, okay? And the last topic of this video is extremely important, and this is called deforestation, okay? Deforestation. So one more thing that decreases biodiversity apart from land pollution, wind pollution, and water pollution is deforestation. This is extremely high yield. This comes up pretty much every single year. And it can come up in questions as well as answers, as well as they can directly ask you about deforestation. So they can directly ask you, or you can use this in your answers or other questions, as well as they can just put it in the question itself. So why is there deforestation? Remember, of course, you guys already know what deforestation is. It's essentially the cutting down of trees, obtaining land, as well as for obtaining wood. So why is there deforestation? Well, one of the things that we studied very recently is that we have increase in population. So if you have increase in population, we need land. And so we want to clear land for building houses. And that is urbanization. So if a question shows up as to why we're cutting down trees, right, they can give you sort of like a graph in which they can sort of show you this is time in years, this is percentage of forestry. Right, percentage of forest, and then you might see this decreasing trend, right, in the exam. And they can ask you, why has it decreased from this particular year to this particular year, right? And then you can say, okay, well, because possibly there's an increase in population, which means that we had to clear land for building houses, right? That's 1 mark. Another could be that we had to do road constructions, or we had to clear land for farming, or we had to obtain wood for increasing demands, right? Or we had to mine, extracting minerals and other valuable resources. So questions like these are very popular for deforestation. And also give you a question as to why did the rate of deforestation suddenly increase more after this one, right? So why has the rate of deforestation sort of so maybe the rate of deforestation is like this, and then it's suddenly is just accelerating. And they can ask you, why did it accelerate? And you could say increased demands, right, of resources like minerals. You could say increased population, so that you have to clear the land, etc. Okay? So what are the effects of deforestation? That's very important as well. So the effects of deforestation would be that, number 1, you're losing biodiversity. Why? Because you're breaking down habitats. For example, if you remove 100 different types of plants, right? Maybe even for farming, and you plant one type of crop, of course, the biodiversity is gone. And we've already talked about how biodiversity is important and why not having biodiversity is bad. Loss of habitat for native wildlife. Climate change, of course, remember trees absorb CO2. So if you are clearing trees, less CO2 is absorbed, less oxygen is created, and therefore it helps in promotion of global warming. Soil erosion. You know, tree roots, they help anchor the soil, prevent it from sliding. This can result in landslides, especially in mountainous areas, especially in third world countries. They have a lot of deforestation in their mountainside, and it is resulting in a lot of landslides nowadays. Desertification. Desertification is the turning off a piece of land into desert area, because you don't have any plantations there to sustain itself, because you don't have communities, because you have destroyed the ecosystem altogether. Okay, so deforestation, very important, very important, extremely important. It's going to come up 100%, not even 99%, 100% is going to come up in your exam. So make sure you do the maximum questions and maximum revision of this particular topic, okay? So that's it for this video, and hopefully you guys can share this, like, subscribe, Again, share this with your friends, and if you want to buy these notes, send us a message. If you are looking for a personalized tuition for yourself or somebody you know, just send us a message, okay? And I'll see you guys in the next and hopefully the final video.